Yeah, great. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because this will be recorded so you can share it or watch again later. Um, so again, I'm Erica Messer, and I started Wolfie's Wish because I didn't have the support that I needed, and I didn't really know where to turn when I lost my cat Wolfgang suddenly and tragically. And I worked with my family to develop some things that shared my resources and really open up this conversation to validate pet loss grief and provide solutions for it. I've learned that it doesn't matter the species of pet, whether it's a lizard or frog or horse, people grieve the same. And this also transcends cultures and languages. So it's really fascinating to study the human animal bond. There's even an organization in New York City called HABRI, which is an institute that really looks into the human animal bond and what it means, what we can do about it. So that's a great resource to look into if you're interested. But today, I really want to talk about businesses and how unsupported grief really affects businesses in any industry. It's pretty fascinating. All of this research is really new. And the CDC, which is the Center of Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, recently projected that 220 billion with a B dollars is what it's costing companies in the US alone for unsupported grief. And yes, that includes human loss as well. And I'm trying to get some data on strictly pet loss. Um, I also want to talk about the cost comparison of acquiring new customers or employees versus retaining existing ones. And those numbers are pretty astounding. So we'll get into that in just a few minutes. Um, and then a really interesting thing that I've developed is to build strategic partnerships with complementary businesses in order to support employees and customers. And I will give a great example of this, who I think is the pioneer of doing it in Germany. And it really is applicable to anyone, anywhere. So this is really exciting. So, first, I want to talk about supporting staff and customers within your company. Whether you're a small boarding facility or you're a large organization that's PricewaterhouseCoopers, there are strategies you can build into your HR. If you don't have HR, just in a staff meeting to look at ways that you can support the staff and customers when they're coping with pet loss. And yes, this is really niche, but it really affects everyone. Um, there's a huge statistic that 70% of people in the US alone have a pet, and likely more than one. So while you may not, you do know someone that has a pet. So, what tends to happen and why the CDC came up with this statistic and how much it's costing companies is because when I myself show up for my 9 to 5 job and I'm struggling with a traumatic loss or just this devastating loss that's really affecting me, there's a term people use called the soul pet, which is just a very strong bond with an animal. I'm not going to be productive. I'm going to be distant. I might even call in sick. So I have a petition right now for pet bereavement leave to integrate that in the policy because those people aren't going to be their best selves showing up at work anyway. So it's just one of the examples that we can all show up collectively to support these people. And that also creates a great work environment. Amy Hillis she was speaking at a conference I was at last year. She said that statistics show 65% of employees are keeping their ear to the ground looking for a better job. And we really want to shrink that number down. And here's just one little thing you can do that you probably haven't thought of that could really affect that statistic. And there are some guidelines that I can create with you too on having these conversations and strategies, because you probably don't know what that should look like and think that it's hard, or maybe you don't want to get your hands dirty, but it's actually really, really simple. And to provide resources to your staff and customers is very, very inexpensive when we look at the cost of replacing that customer or if they don't come back. And I'll go ahead and give you another statistic that 25% of pet owners say that the loss was too hard and they will not get another pet. And if we look at the holistic picture of what that means, that affects the entire pet industry from Chewy.com with the subscription services to the local veterinarian to practitioners that maybe are doing acupuncture for the pet. The boarders, the groomers, the dog walkers are all out of business and are not getting that customer back. If they are getting them back, typically it can be 1 to 4 or 5 years before that person can adopt another pet. So let's go ahead and dive into this statistic where we look at the numbers and the costs. I think this is really fascinating and really drives this idea home. That if you right now think of your favorite staff member, employee, or your customer, your best customer, avatar, who and what is that person? And what revenue do they bring into your business every year? If you're a dog walker and you have people that work for you, your ideal customer might be someone that uses your services every single day. And this can add up to $10,000 a year. If you're a boarding facility, that number is higher. If you have a subscription company that's bringing in revenue, that number could be around $5,000. Myself, with the subscription services that I have, it's about $5,000. So if we look at that period of time of 1 to 5 years, we're looking at an average on the small end of $25,000 to $40,000 of revenue that is gone and might not come back. Okay, so that's just one example of how we can really see how it's affecting businesses. If it's a staff member, the cost to replace them is going to rely on, Indeed or headhunters or posting jobs, and then there's the training involved. So you can really see how these numbers add up fast. Supported customers and employees are likely to stay and or return and adopt again. And I know that the largest pet companies are really interested in getting those shelter numbers down. And so by supporting them with healing practices, helpful practices, okay, we're not talking about flowers in a card. And I want to tell you why. Sending flowers is a constant reminder of a loss, period, whether it's a human or a pet. And people can't put those in a drawer. They die in a week. They're very expensive. I send my mother a Mother's Day bouquet, and it's around $80, $90, and I'm happy to do it. But if that's your mode or go-to for supporting customers, you're spending a lot of money. And those flowers die even sooner if they forget to be watered. So I want to shift that into helpful resources, and I will go about that in just a minute. What Wolfie's Wish does is provide helpful tools. I've created a whole line of products, both virtual and physical, in order to facilitate healing with a cost of under $50 at the high end. In bulk, when I sell wholesale to my customers like Spoonful of Comfort, their costs are very minimal. When I sell to crematories to include products in their return packages, they're looking at just a couple of dollars. So again, when we go back to what it costs to get another customer or employee, the numbers really make sense. So those are some affordable ways that you can help. And I really advocate people getting out of the mindset of just spending money on flowers. But I want to jump into strategic partnerships and what that really looks like, because I don't want to see the pet industry or just HR in general being so fragmented. And so what I do now is I work with crematories and subscription pet companies so they can offset the costs of aftercare services. And this is the example I mentioned earlier in Germany, where there's a crematory chain and a pet subscription chain that are working in tandem to support their customers. And it's a really novel idea. They're called Rosengarten and Fressnapf, and you can Google that. There was a press release last year about it. But I want to bring that to America and see and foster more of those relationships. Maybe it's the pet boarding facility, and I spoke about this in New Zealand last week, offsets some of those aftercare costs. Or what if they acquire a new customer with a puppy and they actually take an extra measure to help pay for some of the training? So there's really interesting ways that we can look at supporting customers. And in fact, another strategic partnership that I'd like to facilitate is that between a veterinarian and a crematory. They do work together to support the care of the animal. But if we go beyond that and we look at the pet parents who are responsible for all of those decisions, that is a whole different way to differentiate businesses, to establish long-term relationships. Because again, no matter the industry, we don't want to lose those customers and employees forever. And so the crematories can provide resources for the veterinarians, such as grief support for the customer. And I can talk about this more with you one-on-one. I'm just giving a quick overview because it's Friday. I want to keep this short and sweet. We're running out of time already. So I've talked a little bit about these strategic partnerships and what those can look like. I've talked about what these costs are that your business can save in order to sustain. And if you think about this example of Chewy.com, if I lose my pet and stop my subscription and I don't come back for a period of time, and then maybe one day I foster another animal, I might hear about a partner, a competitor that is offering more support in that area. And I'm probably going to go to them if I heard about it from a neighbor or family member. So what I would like to see is for your business to have organic growth outside of Google Ads and advertising, where word of mouth really makes a difference. And I can only imagine the conversation I would have with my own family to say, look who showed up for me at the hardest time. So just to recap a few things, we really want to support staff, retain customers, and that can be up to you. You can really customize this, and I would love to talk to you about what your values are, what your budget is, and ways that you want to even answer the phone at a crematory and have that respect and empathy, to have strategies in place for HR to have these conversations, because it's something we don't talk about. It's still taboo, and that's okay, but we can make small, tiny changes that are very simple and they don't cost a lot of money. So perfect timing. I got 1 minute left. If you want to talk to me more about this, my email will be in the description on the repost, but it's just Erica, ERICA, at wolfieswish.com, and that's WOLFIESWISH.com. So I'd love for you to reach out. I offer free consultations to see if we can work something out to help your business retain customers and employees. But maybe you want to just go ahead and take that step to having some resources and tools on hand to support your customers. And lastly, I have to show you my favorite product, which are the Wolfie's Wish grieving cards. And I was very fortunate to be the first person to talk about grief on QVC last month and bring these to a national audience of 9 million people. So it's very exciting. And I thank you all for your time to spend a few minutes on your Friday afternoon and listen to these ideas. Again, I'm going to repost this. I know a lot of people abroad weren't able to watch. It's actually Saturday in New Zealand. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to connecting with you.